I never thought a piece of paper could hurt so much. But when the wedding invitation arrived, addressed only to my ex-wife, it felt like someone had reached into my chest and torn something out. My son, Ethan, was getting married. The same boy I carried on my shoulders through baseball games. The same boy I taught to drive in the empty Walmart parking lot on Sunday mornings. And yet, my name wasn't on the list. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe an oversight. Maybe his fiancé's family handled the invites and missed me somehow. But then, 2 days later, I saw a post on Facebook. Ethan and his mom smiling at a pre-wedding brunch. The caption said, "So grateful to have my family by my side through this journey." No mention of me. No tag. Nothing. I sat at my kitchen table for hours staring at that post, scrolling through comments from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. Everyone congratulated them. A few even commented things like, "Your mom raised you right." And I wondered, was I really such a terrible father that I become a ghost of my own son's story? The truth is, the divorce had been ugly, not violent, not scandalous, just slow, bitter erosion. Ethan was 14 when his mother and I split. We agreed on shared custody, but he chose to live with her full-time after a few months. And I didn't fight him. I told myself it was temporary, that as he got older, he'd come around. I kept sending birthday gifts, paying support on time, trying to stay present without being pushy. But messages went unanswered. Calls stopped. Then came college and silence. Now, years later, he was 27, and I was the man not invited to his wedding. That night, I poured myself a drink, something I rarely do, and stared at that glowing screen with my son's face on it. He looked happy, so painfully happy, and that should have been enough for me. But it wasn't, because every smile in that photo reminded me that I wasn't part of his family anymore. Still, I couldn't shake the question. Why? Why invite her and not me? What did I do that was so unforgivable? The next morning, I made a decision I hadn't planned on making for years. I was going to drive to his mother's house, the same one we once bought together, and find out the truth. As I pulled into familiar cul-de-sac, 100 memories rushed back. The cracked driveway, the old oak tree Ethan used to climb, the window that still had the faint shadow of the baseball he once broke. And standing there on the porch, before I even rang the bell, I saw her, my ex-wife, Linda, older now, grayer hair, but still with that same calm, unshakable expression. She looked at me, surprised, cautious, and before I could even open my mouth, she sighed and said softly, "I was wondering when you'd come." That's when I knew this wasn't a mistake. Something deep was going on, something I didn't see coming. Linda's voice carried that same quiet tone she always used when she wanted to control the conversation, the one that said she already knew what I was going to say. And maybe she did. I stood there, rain still dripping from my jacket, trying to piece together what to say after nearly a decade of silence. "Can we talk?" was all I managed. She hesitated, then stepped aside. The house smelled exactly the same, a faint mix of vanilla candles and coffee. It was like walking into a time capsule of a life that didn't belong to me anymore. Family photos lined the hallway, but every one of them had something in common. Ethan and her. No me, not a trace. On the mantel sat a new photo I'd never seen before. Ethan and his fiancée. Her name, I'd later learn, was Emily. They looked perfect together. The kind of picture that belongs in a magazine. Two young people glowing with love and promise. Linda poured coffee without asking. She always did that. Assumed I wanted it the same way. "Black, no sugar," she said, setting it in front of me. I didn't touch it. My throat was too dry to speak, but I forced the words out. Why wasn't I invited, Linda? I deserved to know. Her eyes flicked toward the window. Anywhere but me. It wasn't my decision. Then whose was it? Ethan's? I asked. My voice cracked more than I wanted it to. She sighed. "He's complicated about you, Mark. You know that." Complicated? I repeated, anger rising in my chest. "That's the word you use for cutting your father out of his wedding?" She set her cup down gently, as if she'd been rehearsing this conversation in her head for weeks. Ethan feels like you weren't there for him when it mattered. He says every big moment in his life, every game, every graduation, every birthday, you had an excuse. That hit hard, because in some ways, he wasn't wrong. I was working long shifts back then, trying to rebuild after the divorce, living out of a one-bedroom apartment across town. There were weekends I missed, but I never stopped caring. I just thought love was something he'd understand with time. I sent money, Linda. I said quietly. I sent gifts. I called. I wrote letters. I know, she said, finally looking at me. But you were trying to fix things with money. He wanted you, not your checks. That one sentence burned more than I expected, because maybe she was right. I stared at my reflection in the coffee cup, the tired eyes, the lines that came from too many nights wondering if I'd failed my son. I just wanted to see him happy, I muttered. Linda reached for something behind her, a small envelope. She slid it across the table. Inside was a photograph. Ethan in a tuxedo, standing beside his best man. My brother, Daniel. For a moment I couldn't breathe. My brother. The man I hadn't spoken to in years, after a fight that tore our family apart. I looked up at her, my voice shaking. Why is he there? She hesitated. Because Ethan asked him to be. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding. So my son cut me out of his wedding and replaced me with my brother? Linda didn't answer. She didn't need to. The rain outside grew louder, pounding against the windows like a warning. In that silence, the truth began to take shape, a truth that went deeper than a wedding invitation. I wasn't just uninvited. I was being erased. The rain outside had turned into a storm, loud enough to rattle the kitchen windows, almost as if the world itself was angry for me. But the silence between Linda and me was worse. It was thick, loaded with everything we didn't say for years. I sat there staring at that photo, my hands trembling slightly. Ethan, my son, grinning like nothing in the world could touch him. And next to him, Daniel, my brother, the man who, once upon a time, had been my best friend, my business partner, and eventually the reason my family fell apart. I pressed the photo to the table and whispered, "You let him take my place?" Linda's face softened for just a moment. "It wasn't like that, Mark." "Then what was it like?" I snapped, "Because it sure looks like he replaced his father with the one man who ruined everything." Her shoulders stiffened. "You still think he ruined everything? After all these years?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "He lied to me about the business, about money, about—" I stopped myself. Because even after all these years, saying it out loud still hurt. Linda looked away, but her silence said enough. She knew what I was talking about. Everyone did. When the divorce happened, I thought it was because we had grown apart. Two people who couldn't make the same dreams fit anymore. But months later, I found out that Daniel had been helping her with finances, that he'd been around the house, fixing things, spending time with Ethan when I wasn't. And maybe it was innocent, or maybe it wasn't, but the timing had burned every ounce of trust one had left in either of them. I clenched my fists, staring at the photo again. Does Ethan even know what happened between us? Or did you both rewrite that story too? Linda sighed. He knows what he needed to know. I didn't want him growing up angry at his uncle, or at me. So instead, you made him angry at me. I said quietly. That's what this was about all along, wasn't it? Her lips pressed into a thin line. You made your choices, Mark. You chose work over family. You chose pride over peace. Don't act like this came out of nowhere. The room suddenly felt smaller, suffocating. Every memory in that house, every laugh, every fight, every quiet Sunday morning, seemed to echo around me like ghosts I couldn't escape. I came here hoping for a conversation. I said finally, but all I got was blame. Linda's expression softened again. Mark, it's not blame. It's just consequences. You were gone. Ethan needed stability, and Daniel was there. That's it. But I couldn't believe that. Not after what I'd seen. Not after knowing my brother was standing next to my son, wearing the suit I should have been in. I stood up to leave. But before I reached the door, Linda said something that froze me. "He's not ready to see you yet, Mark. If you show up at the wedding, it'll only make things worse." I turned slowly. "So that's it? I'm supposed to stay home while my only son gets married? Pretend like I don't exist?" She looked down. "Maybe, for now." I walked out before I said something I couldn't take back. The storm hit my face like shards of glass, and I let it. I needed to feel something other than regret. When I got back to my car, I sat there for a long time, watching the raindrops streak down the windshield. My hand shook as I scrolled through Ethan's social media. Photos of the wedding rehearsal, his fiancée laughing, Daniel smiling proudly beside him. And then I saw a comment from someone I didn't recognize. "Can't wait for tomorrow. Uncle Daniel says the vows are going to make everyone cry." Uncle Daniel says the vows. I froze. Daniel wasn't just the best man. He was officiating the wedding. My own brother was the man marrying my son and his bride. And something in me snapped. This wasn't about forgiveness anymore. This was about truth. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. The storm had passed, leaving the air heavy and still. I opened my closet, pulled out the one suit I still owned, brushed off the dust, and looked in the mirror. For the first time in years, I saw the father I used to be, the one who taught his son to ride a bike, who clapped the loudest at a school play, who worked double shifts just to afford his first car. I wasn't going to stay home. Not this time. Whether they wanted me there or not, I was going to that wedding. And I was going to find out, face to face, why my own son had erased me from his life. The morning of Ethan's wedding felt unreal, the kind of day that should have been filled with pride, laughter, and family. But for me, it began in silence. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my tie for the 5th time. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. The suit fit a little tighter than it used to, and there were more gray strands in my hair than I remembered. Still, for the first time in years, I looked like a father who belonged somewhere, even if no one else thought I did. I didn't have an invitation or a seat or even a reason to believe showing up would change anything. But I needed to see my son, not through a phone screen, not through memories. In person. The wedding was being held at a vineyard just outside town, one of those picture-perfect places with white chairs lined in rows, soft music floating through the air, and people dressed like they were stepping out of a magazine. As I pulled into the gravel lot, I parked far away from the main entrance. My heart pounded like it was trying to escape my chest. For a moment, I almost turned back. I could already imagine the scene. People whispering, Linda's glare, Daniel's smug look. But the thought of my son saying, "I do," without his father even there, that hurt more than anything they could throw at me. So I stepped out of the car. The air smelled like rain and roses. Guests were beginning to take their seats. No one paid attention to me as I walked around the edge of the ceremony area, keeping my head low. And then I saw him, Ethan, standing at the altar, his tux crisp, his posture straight, his expression calm. He looked older than I remembered, confident, sure, in control. He looked like his mother. But when he smiled nervously at someone in the front row, I saw myself in that nervous twitch. My throat tightened. And then I saw him, Daniel, standing beside Ethan, officiating the ceremony, a microphone clipped to his suit. He was older too, but still had that same easy charm, the kind that could make anyone believe he was a hero of a story. I took a seat in the back row, far enough that no one would notice me right away. The music started. Ethan's bride, Emily, walked down the aisle looking radiant, her white dress flowing like something out of a dream. The crowd turned to watch her, phones raised, smiles bright. I should have been smiling too, but all I could do was grip the edge of the bench until my knuckles turned white. When Daniel started speaking, I felt something twist inside me. He talked about love, forgiveness, new beginnings, words that sounded rehearsed, almost like they were meant for me. Then he said it. Marriage is about choosing the people who will stand beside you through pain, through forgiveness, and through truth. Those last 3 words, through truth, hit hard. My eyes met his for just a second, and I swear he knew I was there. He didn't flinch, didn't break. But I saw it, that flicker of awareness, the subtle tightening of his jaw. The ceremony went on. Ethan and Emily exchanged vows, laughter, tears. It was beautiful, painfully beautiful. And yet, as I sat there, I felt invisible, like a ghost watching a life that used to be mine. After the applause, people rose from their seats, heading toward the reception hall. I stayed behind, letting the crowd thin out. Then, when the music faded and the chatter moved away, I saw Ethan and Daniel step aside to talk privately near the vineyard fence. I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was years of silence finally boiling over. Maybe it was the sound of Daniel laughing, that same smug laugh I remember from the night everything fell apart. But before I could stop myself, I was walking toward them. Ethan turned first. His expression froze when he saw me. "Dad," he said, his voice barely audible. Daniel's smile faded. "Mark, what are you doing here?" I stopped a few feet away, hands shaking, watching my son get married, since apparently I didn't make the guest list. Ethan's face hardened. "You weren't supposed to be here." "Why, Ethan?" I asked quietly. "Why didn't you want me here?" He shook his head, glancing between me and Daniel. "Because I didn't want drama. I didn't want this." "Drama?" I said, taking a slow step forward. "You think this is about drama? You think I wanted to crash your big day? I just wanted to see you, to tell you how proud I am. That's it." But he looked away, his jaw tight. "You were never there before. Why now?" The words hit like a punch. I opened my mouth to respond, but Daniel stepped between us. "Mark, maybe it's best you go. This isn't the time." I turned to him, eyes burning. "You've had plenty of time to take everything else from me, haven't you? My business, my reputation, my family." Ethan's head snapped up. "What are you talking about?" Daniel glared at me, his voice low. "Don't do this, Mark. Not here." But it was too late. The truth had been choking me for years, and I wasn't about to swallow it again. "Your Uncle Daniel," I said, looking right at Ethan, "is the reason your mother and I divorced. The reason I lost everything. He wasn't just helping her through the separation. He was helping himself to what was left of my life." Ethan's eyes widened. "That's not true." "Ask him," I said, pointing at Daniel. "Ask him where he was the night your mom filed for divorce. Ask him why he disappeared with half our business money the next week." The silence was deafening. For the first time, Daniel didn't have an answer ready. His confident smile faltered. "Ethan," he began softly, "your dad—" But Ethan stepped back, shaking his head. "No, don't. Just don't." He turned toward me, his expression torn between anger and heartbreak. "All these years, I thought you just walked away. I thought you stopped caring." My voice broke. "I never stopped, son. I just thought I was protecting you. I didn't want you to hate your family." He blinked, tears welling in his eyes. "Then why didn't you tell me?" "Because," I said quietly, "I was scared you'd never believe me." For a long moment, he said nothing. The storm had cleared, but the air was still heavy, the kind of quiet that comes right before everything changes. And then, without a word, Ethan turned and walked away, not toward me, not toward Daniel, but toward the empty rows of chairs, alone. And I realized the truth doesn't heal instantly. Sometimes it breaks everything before it fixes anything. The vineyard had emptied. Guests were inside laughing, music pulsing faintly through the walls, but out here it was quiet. Ethan stood near the edge of the property, hands on his head, staring at the horizon where the storm clouds were finally breaking apart. The last light of sunset was spilling gold over the vines. I wanted to go to him. Every part of me did, but my feet wouldn't move, because I didn't know which version of me he wanted. The father who used to lift him on his shoulders, or the stranger who'd just blown up his wedding day. Daniel was the first to speak. "You shouldn't have done that," he said softly. His tone wasn't angry, just defeated. I turned toward him. "You shouldn't have done any of it." He sighed, rubbing his temple. "I made mistakes, Mark. You think I don't know that? But what good does it do to dig all this up now?" "Good," I said, voice low. "You destroyed a family, Daniel. You took everything that mattered to me and turned it into something I couldn't recognize. And then you had nerve to stand up there and preach about truth." He opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. "No more lies. Not here." Daniel looked down at the grass. For the first time in my life, He looked small, like the weight of what he'd done had finally caught up. But I didn't need his apology. Not now. What I needed was my son. I walked toward Ethan. Each step felt heavier than the last. He didn't turn around when I stopped beside him. For a while, neither of us said anything. The air was cool, filled with the soft hum of the vineyard lights turning on. Fireflies blinked near the trees. It was too beautiful a night for what was happening. "I didn't come here to ruin your day," I said finally. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then why did you?" "Because I couldn't stay silent anymore," I said. "You deserve to know the truth, even if it cost me everything left between us." He let out a shaky laugh, the kind people make when they're trying not to cry. "You think the truth fixes anything, Dad? You think I can just look at everyone differently now? I built my whole life on a story that wasn't real." I nodded slowly. "I know, and I'm sorry for that. For all of it. I was angry and hurt, and I let my silence do more damage than any lie could." He finally turned to look at me. His eyes were red, not just from tears, but from years of misunderstanding. "Do you know how many birthdays I waited for you to show up? How many times I sat by the phone thinking, maybe this year would be different?" The words hit harder than anything Daniel had ever done. I swallowed hard. "Ethan, I did show up. You just didn't see me." He frowned, confused. "There were games I watched from the parking lot. Graduations where I sat in the back, so you wouldn't feel uncomfortable. I sent cards even when I knew they'd end up in the trash. I didn't stop loving you, son. I just thought you didn't want me anymore." He stared at me for a long time. The wind caught his jacket, and for a second, he looked like the little boy I used to chase around the yard, laughing so hard he couldn't breathe. Then he looked away. "I don't know what to do with all this, Dad." "You don't have to do anything," I said softly. "You just live your life. Love that woman of yours. Be the kind of man I failed to be. That's all the redemption I need." I started to turn away, ready to let him go if that's what he needed, when he said quietly, "Wait." I stopped. Ethan wiped his face, trying to hold himself together. "I don't know if I'm ready to forgive you, or him, or anyone, but I don't want to keep pretending you don't exist." My chest tightened. I didn't dare speak. He took a shaky breath. "Emily's family is having dinner tomorrow. Just something small. If you want to come, you can." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a door. And for the first time in years, someone had opened one for me instead of closing it. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I'll be there." He nodded back, barely meeting my eyes, but it was enough. As I walked away, I glanced toward the reception hall. Through the window, I could see Linda sitting alone at a table, staring at her hands. Daniel was gone. The storm between all of us wasn't over. But maybe, just maybe, the rain had finally stopped. That night, I sat in my car outside my old house before heading home. The porch light glowed the same soft yellow as it had the night Ethan was born. Back then, I thought family was something you built and kept forever. I didn't know it was something you had to rebuild, sometimes from ashes. I started the engine, whispering to no one, "I miss your whole life, son, but I'm not missing another day." And for the first time in years, when I looked in the rear-view mirror, I didn't see the man who'd been left out. I saw a father, finally finding his way back home.